herniated disc in your neck. Is there anything more frustrating and more painful than a herniated disc in your neck area? The disc is the little pads between the bones, and what happens is over time through poor posture or through an accident or what have you, the discs are kind of like a jelly donut, and the nucleus, the jelly part of it, starts pushing through the weakest part of that disc or that pad, and eventually ultimately hits one of these nerves, and these nerves go right down into your shoulder, down into your arm. And I know I've actually had one of these myself, and it got really bad. It starts with a little pain in your neck, and you think it's going to go away, but it doesn't. Then you start getting pain up into the base of your skull, what they call the suboccipital areas. You get tension headaches, and then it goes into the shoulders. And so many people come to us and they think they have a shoulder problem, but they actually have a neck herniation. And particularly right into this area here, the levator scapula muscle. And then ultimately it goes down into the arm. And if you're like me, what I started getting was numbness and tingling. And eventually I lost feeling and use of my left arm, and I couldn't even dress myself. But I'm here to say that I'm 110% better. So let's get right to this. I want to go through some stretches and exercises, but those in themselves are not going to be enough. We're going to have to go through other things you're going to have to do. We're going to have to address how you sleep, how you sit, and then we're going to go through some other, at the end of this video, I want to get into some really great techniques or treatments you can do that I did that really worked. So let's get to it. Okay, so let's just jump right into this. Let's get right to the stretches and exercises. And there's three main muscle groups that we want to focus on. There's two in the front and there's one in the back. Most neck herniations are roughly around C5, C6. It doesn't matter. Wherever your herniation is, these exercises will work regardless. But let's say for the point of illustration today, I'm going to work off a left herniation right around C5, C6. The first muscle we want to look at is the anterior scalene. And these are the deep neck muscles in the front. And a really good way to get at that is take your good hand, good side, on your, let's say on this side, right side, we're going to find this bone right across here. It's called the clavicle or collarbone. And you want to use your fingertips, and we're going to just put on top of that clavicle, and we're going to pull down, and that's going to stabilize the clavicle. And so now I'm going to turn my head towards, now remember the pain's on the left side. I'm going to turn my head to the left, and then I'm going to look up towards the ceiling. And while I'm doing that, I'm pulling down on the collarbone, and I'm looking up, and I'm just teasing that area out. I'm teasing. You feel those anterior scalene muscles just stretching. So here we go again. I'm going to pull down, look over this way, and look up towards the ceiling. And it feels really good. And if it hurts a little bit, it's okay. But if it's hurting too much, don't do it. Just back off a little bit. But that's a great stretch for the anterior scalene. Okay, now we're going to move on to the other muscle, which is the sternocleidomastoid. Sounds like a mouthful. Okay, but when we do this, I want you to think about your posture. As we do any exercise, we want to make sure you're, like I'm sitting, you can do this standing, but if you're sitting, make sure your knees are below your hips and you're not translating your head forward. You want to keep your head over your shoulders and your hips, and so you're in a nice relaxed position. Now, there's two ways I get at the sternocleidomastoid and the scalenes. The first way, I want to take, let's say the pain's on my left side again. I want to take my left hand and just put it, palpate right in the pectoral area, right in the chest, and you feel right, the pec minor is usually really sore. You feel a little nodule there. And I take the whole palm of my other hand underneath my chin, and I just do a nice stretch. So the action here is we're just going to just gently, we're going to tease, we're not pulling back, we're just lifting up on the neck. So we're just kind of teasing in this kind of distraction motion. So just kind of just nice and gently pull and hold it there for about 10 seconds and then relax. And that's a wonderful, that you feel such a sense of relief when you do that stretch. If you want to take it to the next level, there's two ways to do the next kind of exercise. Same thing, we're working the anterior scalenes and the sternocleidomastoid. One way would be to actually sit on your hand, which I like, or you can put your hand behind your back. But I'm going to sit on my hand because that's the one I prefer the most. And now this time, we really want to take it to the next level. So these work in sequence. You want to start with the anterior scalene on its own, then we work on the sternocleidomastoid and the anterior scalene muscle stretch, and now we're going to really stretch the whole thing on steroids. So my involved side, my left side, is being stabilized by sitting on my left hand. I'm going to take my good side, my right hand, reach across my head, and here's the goal here is when I'm going to start looking down and with my whole head's going to turn, and I'm going to be looking at my right pocket. So I want to reach across and pull, and again, so we're just teasing, we're just stretching these muscles out, but we want to work in the alignment of those joints, the facet joints in your neck and your discs. So we want to keep the shoulder back. I reach across with my good side and I stretch, I pull, tease that out, and I'm looking down at my right pocket, and I can really good stretch there. I hold it there for 10 seconds, and relax. And you want to do about 3 or 4 of each of these exercises. Hold for 10 seconds, relax for 10 seconds. Now we want to move on to trying to decompress the disc. We want to start creating a negative pressure to suck that jelly nucleus right back into the center of the disc, which would also bring nutrients and oxygen, re-nutrify it, and gets rid of the toxins. But we want to take it baby steps here. I always recommend, if you have a neck herniation, to get a proper scan, get an MRI scan, get a proper diagnosis. You should be under someone's care. Do not take a neck herniation lightly. These things you really have to get these things sorted out. The information I'm giving you here is what worked for me, but this should be just informational only, and this should be done in tandem with a qualified or somebody who's excellent at fixing neck herniations. Okay, so this next thing, in terms of decompression of the joint, what I found best was using a bed. And what I want to use is just the weight of my head. We want to start by lying flat on your back in the recovery position, and we just inch your way back. Now, I would start with maybe half of my head off the table, and then you can work your way down. Over time, over days, over weeks, you can a little bit further, 3/4, and ultimately you can work to the point where your shoulders are right at the edge of the bed, and you just let your head hang off the bed. And it's really wonderful. It's a real wonderful stretch because you can feel it just pulling and just distracting that disc in your neck, and it feels great. You might do this kind of stretch and you walk away and the pain starts coming back a few hours later. Just go back and do it again. Okay, let's move on to the next. If you want to take it to the next level, this is something that I found essential for my neck herniation, and I became an absolute black belt. It's a technique called spinal decompression, or non-surgical spinal decompression. And basically, it's just mechanical traction. The neat thing about it is you can get these tables that actually, and you have to go through a doctor who can do this for you, but you can set the table so let's say my disc was C5, C6, you can actually target that disc. Now, the mechanism with spinal decompression, non-surgical spinal decompression, is it gently pulls the bones apart. And what that does is sucks the nucleus and nutrients and oxygen back into the disc. But the problem is with normal traction is after a minute or two, the muscles in and around the spine start tightening up. And so it's almost counterintuitive. You think it's a good thing, like people on a traction table or inversion table, you think that might be a good thing. But what happens is, paradoxically, it makes things worse, because when those muscles tighten up, it creates pressure, or what they call intrathecal pressure. So non-surgical spinal decompression is really cool, because what we can do is we can actually focus at the disc we want to get at, but then it goes in kind of a sine wave. It pulls and it relaxes, and it pulls and it relaxes, and after like a minute or two, actually physiologically tricks your nervous system, tricks your muscles, and your muscles just relax. It feels great, because then you're just pulling on the disc over time. You just have to build it over a little bit of time. It's kind of a cascading effect. And I did this for maybe about 22 times in a row, and at the end of that, oh my God, but every day I just felt a little bit better. And I am like 1,000%. Let me show you one more trick that I used, and you're going to have to find a practitioner though. Okay, we're going a little technical, a little maybe outside the boundaries of what I normally talk about, but I want to be fair with you. I'm telling you exactly what I did to help my neck herniation. Now, I had a severe C5, C6 herniation. My disc was blown. I lost use of my left arm. I couldn't dress myself. I had no feeling. I couldn't even pick up a cup. A lot of my friends who are surgeons, they said, look, you need to get a disc replacement. And it's just not that I'm against it, surgery. It's just not who I am. And so I found laser to be a useful piece of the puzzle. Laser is really good for pain relief. It's good for getting rid of inflammation. And most importantly, it's good for cellular regeneration. So if you're using a laser, I recommend going with a class 4 laser. They're pretty powerful. You want to use protective eyewear, and you can take the laser head and you can go right into the disc. You can go into the scalene muscles, the levator scapula, the sternocleidomastoid, all the muscles we were talking about earlier. But more importantly, you can actually go right down the nerve root, and you can go right in the arm, into the forearm, and into the hand. And it took me roughly, I'd say 8 to 10 laser treatments in conjunction with the non-surgical spinal decompression and the exercises. So roughly, I would say 8 to 10 of these, 22 of the non-surgical spinal decompression, and exercising all the time. That was about 9 years ago. It took me about 18 months to get out of this. If you have a neck herniation, you have to be patient. Take the little wins. They build on each other. It's kind of a cascade. It's a marathon. It's not a short race. It's not a sprint. But I am here to say that I am 110% better. I have no deficit. I have no pain. I have full function. They work for me, and hopefully they'll work for you. Let's move on to now how to sleep and how to sit. If you have a neck or cervical herniation, you really have to rethink how you sit. And I want to show you why. Suppose I'm sitting on a normal chair the way most of us sit. We sit with our feet on the ground, our knees at 90 degrees, our low back at 90 degrees. Most of us slouch. And you know, don't lie, you know we do it. And so what happens here is we don't use the muscles in the front, but we hinge on our back. But look what's happening to my head. My head's translating forward. Every inch that my head translates forward, I'm putting 10 pounds of pressure on that cervical disc. So the rule of thumb is this. First of all, if you have a neck herniation, or even if you don't, you want to try to get away from any soft chair. Couches are absolutely, no. You want to stay away from that because you're going to go into a C curve and you're going to push that head forward and you're going to create a lot of pressure on that disc. If you have a neck herniation, you got to make sure that your hips are always higher than your knees. The rule of thumb is about maybe 3 or 4 inches higher. And you see, naturally, I don't have to think about it. You want to set your chair up so it does all the heavy lifting. You don't want to you want to sit down and you're good to go. What does this mean? This means in your car. This means when you're having dinner, at the movies, on a flight. You want to make sure that hip is higher than your knees because that brings the head back. It engages the muscles in the front. It relaxes the muscles in the back. The main thing is that the head, you think of your head like a bowling ball, and it's like a pendulum. We want to keep that perfectly aligned so gravity has no effect. There's many ways to do that. One way would be to sit on the edge of the chair. You don't have to get very technical here, and just get those knees down. Make sense? Or you can get like things like we designed, seat orthotic. You put that on the end of a chair, and again, you don't have to think about it. And the nice thing about this one is it's kind of portable. You can take it with you anywhere, movie theaters, airplanes, whatever. I always feel sorry for people outside Ireland because I make all these things, these crazy inventions for people here, but I get calls and emails from people like in the States or New Zealand or whatever, and I can't send this over there. So you have to use your own imagination, be creative. But the rule of thumb here is this: if you have a neck herniation, hips always higher than your knees. Get that impregnate that into your brain, because you're not going to get better if you don't sit right. Okay, let's talk about sleeping with a neck herniation. This is probably the biggest challenge because if you have a cervical or neck herniation, you just can't get comfortable. And if you're not comfortable, you're not sleeping. If you're not sleeping, your body's breaking down because your sleep is probably, if we had to break your whole day into 3 parts, let's say 8 hours and 16 hours, those 8 hours of sleep are perhaps the most important because that's when you're making brand new cells. And if you're not sleeping properly, you're not making brand new cells, you're never going to heal. So we want to get this right. So let's talk about a few things. There's so many different philosophies on sleep, but all the sleep experts agree that sleeping on your stomach is an absolute no-go, especially if you have a neck problem. Because think about this, you have to breathe, so you're going to torque your head to breathe, and you're setting up a bad pattern, and you're compressing on those discs in your neck, and you're going to make it much worse. Now the second thing would be is if you slept on your back. The rule of thumb is when you're sleeping is that you want to sleep as though you're standing tall with your knees slightly bent. So if you're going to sleep on your back, I don't recommend a big pillow because that would bring your head up, or too small, or no pillow, that brings you back into extension. So you want roughly something about 1 or 2 inches, and you want it nice and comfortable like that. The other thing is if you sleep on your back, you want a pillow underneath your knees because that relaxes your low back muscles and takes a lot of pressure off your neck and your shoulder. Now if you sleep on your side, and I recommend if you sleep on your side, and let's say if you have a problem on your left side, sleep with the left side up. For the most part, it's probably a good idea to rotate that. But for the most part, the majority, let's say 60% of the time, sleep with the involved side up. The same thing, you want to sleep on your side, and you want to invest in a decent pillow. Most people don't even think about pillows. I really feel awful for people outside Ireland and the UK because they can't avail a lot of the technology stuff that I'll show you for example. Here's something I invented. It's born from imagination, born from frustration because, patients might come in and say, hey, can you recommend a pillow? And I'm like, I can't. I'm just not comfortable with any of that. But what I put into the pillow was we have a cutout for the neck, so it just cradles the neck, and so it's really comfortable. You want to get the alignment right because you have 8 hours where you can absolutely positively get right. It cuts out for the ear, the jaw, opens up for breathing, but it sets the alignment right. And so if you want to wake up feeling like you slept, a lot of people are frustrated because they sleep 8 hours and they feel like they slept 10 minutes, or they're on their 3rd or 4th cup of coffee in the day just trying to get through the day because they didn't sleep right, or they're in pain all day long because they're just not recovering. So just get a decent pillow, and if you're going to sleep on your side, I recommend putting a pillow between your knees because you want to keep the pelvis relaxed, because if the pelvis is torquing, that's going to put pressure on your neck. You can't think in terms of your spine as utilitarian. You can't just think about, okay, I'm just going to get the pillow right. You got to think of the whole the whole bed and the whole body. And so, you want to get a decent pillow and perhaps a decent mattress. 30% of your comfort comes from your pillow, 70% comes from your mattress. It's really good to get a mattress and pillow that work in conjunction with each other, but you want to sleep as though you're standing tall. If you're sleeping on your side, I recommend also putting a pillow between your knees to keep that pelvis stabilized, and that takes tremendous pressure off of your neck and shoulders.